So the Phantom... No, not that one. The Phantom...
Robert Englund is...
You're him, aren't you?
No, still not that one, although, maybe some other time. The Phantom has always kind of held a special place for me because, well, nobody likes it. Or at least, it just kind of has a bad rap. So I was about 9 years old when my dad took me to see this in theaters, and I was like super into it. I got the promotional Phantom skull ring. I got the super cool hologram 90s VHS. Does this register? I missed the 90s. And I bragged to all my friends about it, and nobody cared. So the Phantom didn't exactly blow up the box office upon its initial release. The film opened in over 2,000 theaters in June 1996, but debuted just number 6 at the weekend box office, right behind Eddie, Dragonheart, Twister, Mission Impossible, and The Rock. Yeah. So the early 1990s made a couple of attempts to really revitalize the period-based comic book movie. 1991 saw The Rocketeer, riding the yellow coattails of Warren Beatty's moderately successful Dick Tracy adaptation from the previous year. Now, 1994's The Shadow, starring Alec Baldwin, brought back the serialized 1930s anti-hero masquerading as a millionaire playboy by day and stalking bad guys by night in the city as the merciless and enchanted Shadow. And it grossed $32 million domestically. I think what The Phantom and these other films really failed to do was just connect with a younger audience, which is pretty much the kiss of death for all comic book movies. I also think being set in the 1930s and featuring an all-adult cast and starring heroes they've never heard of, kids and their parents just simply weren't interested. So the film currently stands at a 42% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 4.9 on IMDb. Not that that means much, but it clearly says that people just aren't, digging this movie. No one's talking about it. Nobody cares, and pretty much serves as the go-to target for all dorky superhero costume jokes. And I say at least they lost the underwear. But having rewatched the film recently and multiple times since its original release, I can safely say that the film deserves better. Let's talk about The Phantom. So originally I was going to do this really cool thing where I put the ring on my finger and I punch at the camera just like in the movie, except I guess this was designed for like a 3-year-old because it barely fits my pinky. So
The Phantom.
Before we jump into the film itself, it's important to understand who the character of the Phantom is and, how he got his start. The Phantom was created by Lee Falk in 1936, debuting as a newspaper comic strip. Come the 1940s, the character leapt onto the comic book page, where in one incarnation or another, the Phantom's adventures continue to this day. So the Phantom is the story of the Ghost Who Walks, a mythical protector living in the mysterious and fictional jungles of Bengala, believed to be immortal. Sworn to fight greed, piracy, and evildoers in all forms, the Phantom strikes fear into the hearts of anyone who dares to traverse the sacred jungle and the secrets it holds. However, in reality, he's anything but immortal and is actually one of multiple Phantoms throughout history, the persona being passed down from generation to generation, from father to son, traditionally. Unlike many other comic book heroes, the Phantom has no superpowers and utilizes his own strength, wit, and intelligence, and guns, to defeat his enemies. The Phantom's true identity is Kit Walker, who was educated abroad but returned to the jungle upon his father's murder to assume the mantle and become the 21st Phantom. Of course, the Phantom does not work alone and receives help from his trusty animal sidekicks, including a wolf or dog, sometimes named Devil, a horse called Hero, and a trained falcon named Fraka. Also sometimes dolphins and tigers. The Phantom also secretly aids and even sometimes directs the Bengala Jungle Patrol, making him one of the few superheroes with his own private army. So let's talk about that costume. The Phantom was really the first comic book superhero to don the whole tights mask combo. Originally, creator Lee Falk considered making the character's costume gray and even dubbing him the Gray Ghost. However, with the Phantom's debut in the Sunday strip in 1939, his costume was given its now iconic purple color, however arbitrarily, and despite continuing to describe the character as gray in the text, Falk eventually just caved and accepted the character's purple adornment. Later in the comics, a proper backstory was given to the costume, in which the original Phantom took inspiration from a Bengalan god, a demon god, in his purple appearance, and used purple wild berries to dye his clothing, and all the other Phantoms ever since have just kind of followed suit, honoring that tradition. So in the source material, the Phantom wears 2 iconic rings, one to mark his allies, 4 cross sabers, and one to strike his enemies, a skull. So I guess that means he's punching his allies, but in a good way? In some iterations, the skull ring is said to have belonged to the Roman Emperor Nero, and it is even said to be made from the nails that hung Jesus on the cross. So in a way, getting punched in the face with one is quite an honor. Now, 1996's The Phantom isn't the first time the character has been adapted into live action. In 1943, Columbia Pictures released a popular 15-episode serial starring Tom Tyler in the titular role. In 1955, a sequel series called Return of the Phantom was filmed, seeing actor John Hart take over the part. However, after losing the rights to the character before principal photography could be completed, the production was forced to kind of reshoot a large portion of the series, which also had to be renamed as a result, and I'm not kidding, retitled to The Adventures of Captain Africa. The 50s. The Phantom continued to appear here and there over the decades, perhaps most memorably in the 1980s animated series Defenders of the Earth and the 1994 series Phantom 2040. But despite the lackluster premiere, 1996's The Phantom is likely how most people know and remember the character, for better or worse. The film is directed by Australian filmmaker Simon Windsor and written by Jeffrey Boehm. Windsor is mostly known for his lower-budget Australian-American B-movies, as well as a handful of somewhat forgettable 90s family movies and comedies. But Windsor's experience in making quick and dirty, lighthearted films and shoestring-budget thrillers made him the perfect candidate for The Phantom. So the filmmakers approached the material in the spirit of the classic movie serials, light and breezy, with archetypal characters, real stunts, practical effects, and partially filmed on location in various parts of Thailand, New York, and Australia. Also citing the film in the late 1930s helped further capture that feel. It really does feel like a modern-day movie serial. The film remains fairly faithful to the original source material, complete with the skull ring, a pretty literal adaptation of the costume, devil, hero, the skull cave, jungle patrol, and other subtle portions from the mythology it's based on. The movie knows exactly what it is and what it's doing, and like the Indiana Jones movies, another film franchise inspired by the classic serials, balances at times very dark moments.
Just turn the focus knob.
With more lighter ones.
All right, gentlemen, nobody... Ladies, kindly pardon my error.
The film takes the pulpy over-the-top elements of the source material and plays them straight. It's a 40s serial with a big budget full of pirates and the mob and treasure hunters and ships, car and horseback chases, plane stunts, big cities and dense jungles, mysticism and supernatural forces. It's a classic swashbuckler romp and an old-fashioned safari adventure, and the film proudly pursues this balance. The film is also excellently cast. Billy Zane plays the Phantom and his alter ego Kit Walker with ease, wit, and charm. Zane, of course, went on to star in James Cameron's Titanic the following year, making a blessedly quick career comeback. So Christy Swanson stars as Diana Palmer, who is from the comic books, and she's the Phantom's longtime love interest and inevitable wife, again in the comics. While she is good in the film and shares genuine on-screen chemistry with Zane, unfortunately, Swanson found this to be just like another black mark on her filmography throughout the 1990s, beginning with 1992's Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Oh, I'm definitely doing that one. Catherine Zeta-Jones, making her major feature film debut here, plays the femme fatale character Sala to a T. Although she suddenly changes sides at the end for like no reason. So Trent Williams chews up the scenery in his gleefully evil performance as Xander Drax.
Xanderdrax. Xander Drax.
I can imagine to some Williams' performance may be too over the top, maybe even bordering on annoying. However, I find his cheerful demeanor and exterior to be very unsettling because you know that there is a cold-blooded killer and madman stirring just beneath the surface. And what movie isn't improved with the addition of Cary Hiroyuki Tagawa? One thing has always bothered me though concerning the casting, and that's the actor playing his dad. He looks to be about 70, and yet we're to believe that he was the Phantom just like 6 years earlier, and he's not a Sylvester Stallone 70 either. Now don't get me wrong, I definitely recognize some of the film's faults. The action at times feels clunky or like undershot, and sometimes suffers from what I call 90s slow-mo-itis. Although it does really operate within the kind of rules and logic of a 1940s movie serial, the film does really heavily rely on plot contrivances, and like most comic book movies, is as predictable as the sun rises. Nonetheless, the film is tightly edited and paced and showcases beautiful cinematography by David Burr, again, often filming on location, although the sets are beautifully photographed as well. In fact, the late great film critic Roger Ebert gave the film 3.5 stars and called it one of the best looking films in a long time. All this accompanied by David Newman's outstanding and memorable score. Seriously, like one of the most underrated superhero themes of all time. Of course, further attempts have been made to kind of bring the Phantom back to life in live action. Recently, 2009 saw Sci-Fi Channel releasing a series which did not succeed, and there's been rumors of a new movie being in a development in one form or another for like the last 20 years. I'm all for it. I just don't know if audiences are quite ready yet, but you better strike while the superhero iron is hot. Fortunately, the Phantom has found a lot of success and a second life on the home entertainment market. When it was initially released, it was a huge success on VHS. It was later released on DVD, where it found even further success and was released on Blu-ray as recently as 2010. Call it rose-colored glasses, but if the Phantom is a movie you typically kind of just like dismiss as part of the tragedy that is 1990s comic book cinema, but haven't seen the film in a while, definitely give it a chance. Definitely check it out. You might just be surprised with how much fun you actually have. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, feel free to click like below. And if you want to see more videos like this one, just go ahead and click subscribe.